Oh, hello, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank you for all the lovely letters you have sent me.
Hollywood sold happy families like a product. Off camera, the damage often started at home, where one adult controlled the schedule, the money, the access, and the silence. Tonight, 12 true stories where the villain isn't the studio or the press, it's the parent or the guardian who was supposed to protect you.
Well, my mother, I was the last of her children, and she was 40.
Mm-hmm. You were an exceptionally pretty baby, so your father and mother had every right to be happy at the birth of their third child.
1. Cary Grant. Mother erased. Archibald Leach, the future Cary Grant, was still a child when his father, Elias James Leach, made a decision that rewired his entire emotional life. He had Archie's mother, Elsie Kingdon Leach, committed to Bristol's asylum system and then controlled the story his son was allowed to live in. Glenside Hospital Museum records the key paperwork moment. Elsie entered the hospital on the 3rd of February 1915. After she vanished from the home, Archie was told she'd gone away on a long holiday, and later that she was dead. The point wasn't just absence. It was a parent rewriting reality and training a child to accept silence as an answer. He didn't learn the truth until he was 31, when his father finally admitted she was still alive and institutionalized. Grant then moved quickly to take responsibility for her care. Records and biographies describe him arranging for her discharge and supporting her afterward. This isn't a story about a parent losing someone. It's about a parent editing a mother out of a child's world and teaching him that the people you love can vanish and nobody has to explain why. 2. Clara Bow. Knife at the throat. Clara Bow's parents had names, addresses, and a Brooklyn life on paper. But inside the apartment, the family felt like a slow emergency. Her father, Robert Walter Bow, drifted in and out of work and presence. Her mother, Sarah Gordon Bow, lived with severe instability that Clara, as a child, had to manage. Bow later described growing up taking care of her mother, handling seizures, surviving hostility, while the mother did not take care of her. She recalled that her mother could be mean and that the childhood was shaped by fear more than comfort. The moment that defines this story is chilling. Bow said she awoke one night in February 1922 to a butcher knife held to her throat by her mother. She fought her off, locked her away, and in the morning, the mother claimed no memory. Whatever you call that, illness, breakdown, tragedy, the effect on the child is the same. You learn that home is unpredictable and mother can mean danger. 3. Buster Keaton, Vaudeville Bruises. Joseph Joe Keaton and Myra Keaton didn't raise a child first. They raised an act. From the time Buster was tiny, the family's vaudeville routine was built around a brutal visual idea. The audience laughs harder when the kid doesn't cry, so the kid becomes the prop. Because it looked like abuse, reformers and child labor authorities treated the Keatons like a moving target. Keaton recalled that his father was repeatedly arrested and that officials in New York brought him in to be stripped and examined for bruises and broken bones. But what happened next mattered. The doctors found no bruises, and the fight shifted from injury to whether a child should be allowed to work at all. Keaton's own wording exposes the trap. Reformers tried to raise age limits. Lawyers answered that the law named certain dangerous acts, wires, trapeze, bicycles, but had no clear rule that stopped his father from using him on stage as a human mop. The child wasn't protected because the paperwork didn't know how to name what it was seeing. That's why this belongs in a Cruel Parents episode, even without courtroom findings of abuse. It's parental logic that turns childhood into a job and turns the child's body into the product. 4. Jackie Coogan, It Belongs to Us. Jackie Coogan became one of the first mega-child stars and then learned the hardest rule of his own home. In his parents' eyes, his earnings were family property. In May 1938, newspapers reported Coogan suing his mother and stepfather, Lillian Coogan Bernstein and Arthur Bernstein, alleging they deprived him of millions he earned as a child. The cruelty here isn't just they spent it, it's the mindset behind it, captured in a contemporary quote that still lands like a slap. Time magazine reported Lillian Bernstein saying, "He isn't entitled to that money. It belongs to us. That sentence is the core of a certain stage parent theology. I made you, therefore I own you. The child becomes a revenue stream, then a debtor, then a traitor if he asks for what he earned. This case helped catalyze what people now call Coogan accounts, laws requiring a portion of a minor performer's earnings be protected in a blocked trust. But even legislation can't give someone back the childhood lesson that love at home had a price tag. 5. Rita Hayworth, Father's Dark Lessons. Rita Hayworth was born Margarita Carmen Cancino, and her father, Eduardo Cancino, wasn't just a parent. He was her manager, dance partner, and gatekeeper. In accounts of the family's touring act, The Dancing Cancinos, the father-daughter partnership is framed less as mentoring and more as control. A child trained to perform on an adult schedule, with the parent holding power over money, movement, and access. Vanity Fair, drawing on biographer Barbara Leeming, If This Was Happiness, describes Eduardo as controlling and abusive, an adult who could be violent behind closed doors, and who, Leeming wrote, pushed his daughter through humiliation and punishment. Leeming also wrote that Hayworth later confided to Orson Welles about deeply disturbing abuse she said she endured in those years. These are biographical claims from secondary sources, not courtroom findings, but they point to the darkest form of power a parent can wield, turning a child's talent, fear, and silence into fuel for the act. And when a parent drives a child beyond limits, the ending isn't always scandal or rebellion. Sometimes it's simpler and colder. Survival without escape. An adult life still shaped by what the home trained her to endure. 6. Lucille Rickson, Worked to Collapse. Lucille Rickson didn't get tired. She was worked until her body shut down. In 1924, she was pushed through an assembly line pace, about 10 feature films in a little over 7 months. A child can't set limits, demand schooling, or refuse a call time. The adults around her could, and didn't. When the breakdown hit, the family doctor, Dr. J.F. McKittrick, said she had crowded too much work into too short a time, overtaxed herself, and suffered a complete physical and nervous collapse. That wasn't a poetic headline. It was a medical warning on record while she was still alive. Then comes the coldest detail. Despite all that work, she ended up in severe straits. Variety reported a fund had to be raised to help her before she died, and that her guardians, Rupert Hughes and Conrad Nagel, were preparing to fight her father's claim as administrator of her estate. Even at the end, the adults were positioned around the money and the paperwork. Her death certificate cites tuberculosis. But the story isn't the diagnosis, it's the choices that came before it. The schedule kept running, the warning signs were ignored, and a 14-year-old's body was forced to stop the adults who wouldn't. 7. Dorothy Dandridge, Auntie Mama. In this house, discipline meant pain, and performance was the only form of safety. Dorothy Dandridge's mother, Ruby Dandridge, treated her daughter's childhood like a way out. Dorothy and her sister Vivian weren't raised first. They were trained. Rehearsals, bookings, and professional behavior, with Ruby driving the act forward and expecting results. For enforcement, Ruby relied on her romantic companion, the woman Dorothy knew as Auntie Mama, often identified in film history accounts as Eloise Matthews and in other references linked to Geneva Neva Williams. She's described as a strict music teacher who used physical punishment and psychological intimidation to keep Dorothy and Vivian stage ready, drilling them until performance became obedience. Ruby justified it with one hard line repeated in accounts: Dorothy would not end up in Mr. Charlie's kitchen. The promise came with a price. Childhood turned into a touring routine and discipline delivered as hurt. Approval wasn't affection, it was conditional. You earned it by performing correctly. The ugliest part is the structure. Ruby didn't have to be the one hitting every time. She only had to keep the schedule moving, keep the enforcer close, and accept the damage as the cost of building a star. 8. Baby Peggy, Obedience for Sale. This wasn't discipline. This was an assembly line, where obedience itself was the product. Baby Peggy was Peggy Jean Montgomery, the daughter of Marion and Jack Montgomery. What matters isn't only that she worked, It's that her father ran the machine. In her later recollection, he trained his daughters like horses, snapping commands, cry, laugh, be frightened, and she learned to produce emotions on cue. Between 1921 and 1924, she made around 150 short films, a pace that turned childhood into shifts. She later described stunts and hazards adults treated as normal production, most memorably a set doused with kerosene and lit, where the escape route caught fire too, and she had to scramble out across a burning windowsill. The money makes it uglier. She was promoted as the $1 million baby, yet nothing meaningful was secured for her future. When the screen work dried up, the family pushed her into vaudeville, where she later said she was allowed a nickel per show while adults handled the real earnings, then asked, years later, whether she planned to sue too. She didn't. She spent years as nobody, trying to outrun the identity that had been sold, until she rebuilt her life as Diana Sarah Cary, a writer and silent film historian, and pushed publicly for stronger protections so the next baby Peggy wouldn't be raised as a paycheck. 9. Mary Miles Minter, mother on trial. Her mother didn't just manage the career, she owned the ledger. Mary Miles Minter was born Juliet Riley. Her mother, Lily Pearl Miles, known professionally as Charlotte Shelby, dominated her life, widely described as controlling, ambitious, and difficult to challenge inside her daughter's own career and home. The clean, cold fact that turns this into a bad parent story is simple. In 1925, Minter sued her mother for an accounting of the money Shelby received during her screen career. It wasn't settled at a family table. It was handled like a business dispute, out of court, and then formalized far from home, signed at the American consulate in Paris on January 24, 1927. That location is the detail that stings, not reconciliation, not a private conversation. A consulate, paperwork, witnesses, signatures, like two strangers closing a deal. A daughter on one side, her own mother on the other. When a child has to litigate to see the truth, the relationship is already broken. The parent held the receipts, and the daughter had to fight to read her own childhood in numbers. 10. Frances Farmer, courtroom cage. Frances Farmer's mother, Cora Lillian Van Ornum Farmer, escalated their conflict into a legal weapon. After Frances returned to Seattle with her in September 1943, the fight turned constant. And less than 6 months later, her mother filed a complaint in King County Superior Court asking that Frances be designated an insane person and sent to Harborview for observation and treatment. On March 23, 1944, at a hearing at Harborview County Hospital, 2 psychiatrists testified that Frances was legally insane, citing agitation, delusions, and paranoia. A court-appointed guardian ad litem then waived her right to a jury trial, and the judge ordered her committed to Western State Hospital for the insane in Steilacoom. Inside Western State, the treatment was force and routine. HistoryLink reports she underwent electroconvulsive shock therapy 2 or 3 times a week for 3 months, with the expected fallout, disorientation and memory loss, and was declared completely cured, then returned to her mother's custody in July 1944. The paper trail didn't end there. After a brief release, she was arrested for vagrancy in California later that month, penniless, apparently looking for work, and by May 1945 she was recommitted at her mother's request, remaining at Steilacoom for 5 more years. 11. Baby Marie Osborne, stolen childhood. They didn't just raise her, they renamed her. Baby Marie was born Helen Alice Myers in Denver on November 5, 1911, and was taken from the Colorado State Home for Dependent Children when she was still an infant. The adults who raised her, Leon and Edith Osborne, renamed her Marie, and later even added an E to their surname, Osborne becoming Osborne. In Long Beach at Balboa Studios, she was discovered by director Henry King and turned into a brand. The Osbornes treated the child like property. They built a business around her, and after her Balboa contract moved into making their own Baby Marie pictures through Diando Deandro, and even licensed Baby Marie dolls. The theft came in layers. She didn't learn the Osbournes weren't her real parents until she was in her early teens. Then came the second shock. The same adults who claimed her fought over and squandered her earnings. She later said there was a trust fund, but she never seemed to receive anything from it, while her foster parents lived well during her peak years. And even the home wasn't stable. The Osbournes divorced when she was about 7 or 8, and she was shuttled back and forth between them. Another reminder that the child was never the priority. 12. Freddie Bartholomew, guardian trap. Some adults don't need a fist. They need a judge and a signature line. Freddie Bartholomew, born Frederick Cecil Bartholomew, was sent from London for health reasons, and in spring-summer 1934, his aunt, Millicent Mary Bartholomew, Aunt Sissy, took him to America on what she called a 60-day vacation. He didn't come back. On October 22, 1935, the Los Angeles County Superior Court appointed Millicent guardian of Freddie's person and estate without his parents' consent. His parents, Cecil Llewellyn Bartholomew and Lillian May Clark Bartholomew, came to Los Angeles to fight it, and the case dragged on through motions, objections, and compromises. Then the lock clicked tighter. An adoption order was entered April 3, 1937. The parents tried to revoke it on September 27, 1937. The court denied it on November 1, 1937, and the denial was affirmed on appeal on November 21, 1938. By early 1938, filings showed the estate being eaten up by taxes, attorney's fees, and court-ordered payments. Millicent petitioned to cut off the 20% stream to the father and siblings, and an order ended those payments on February 24, 1938. In June 1939, the parents escalated with a $1 million damages suit alleging they'd been defrauded into the compromise and the adoption. That's the trap. Guardianship as a lever. Custody, money, identity, and access controlled by petitions and orders, while the child's life is argued like a case file. So here's the question. How many perfect Hollywood families were just a poster, and how much of the damage started at home? When betrayal begins with a parent or guardian, the industry simply builds a business on silence.